everyone, my name is Sally Fowler. I'm the owner and trainer for Disabled Advantage. Thank you for joining me on my Patreon tier Service Dog Questions Answered. Today's question is, what do I need to do for my retired service dog? Should I rehome them? Are they a pet now? Do I have to give them back to the program or breeder? And other questions are things that I'm going to cover under this topic. First of all, I want you to try to start thinking about what you're going to do for your retired service dog before your service dog retires. And you may not be able to come up with a concrete plan because why your service dog retires and how they retire is going to have an impact on the answers to some of these follow-up questions. But if you wait until your dog is retired, your brain is in a really weird, chaotic, spinny storm place where you have now realized you have no medical assistive device. You are not going to be working side by side with your partner every day. You have to figure out what to do with them. You have to figure out what they are. And oh yeah, you have to start looking for another service dog, or hopefully you're currently training your second service dog. But whatever is going on, the news that your dog is retired now is at best good. You can rest now. And at worst, oh crap, what do I do now? And so if you can, I didn't come up with a great plan. Okay, so learn from my mistakes, basically. We always had this, we had a plan. Okay, I won't say we didn't have a plan. We had a plan. It was not a great plan. So the plan was that when my service dog Robbie retired, he would become a farm dog and he would go to work with my husband. And that would give him exercise. He could follow my husband around the farm and hang out while he built fence and hang out with him in the shop on a dog bed or in a crate, and it would be fine. He liked being at the farm. He liked being outside. He was really responsive off leash, and he enjoyed being with my husband. So we figured it would be a good fit. What we didn't take into account and what we didn't know was coming for us was that Robbie got retired early due to an injury. And that injury made it impossible and impractical for him to go to work with my husband every day at the farm, which meant he needed to be at home with me all the time. But that brought about its own complications. And it was a mess. There were a lot of considerations that we had to make kind of on the fly, and it was a learning process for both of us. We had never done this before. Robbie was our first service dog. We never gone through the process of retiring a dog before. And anytime I tried looking for information on this online, I actually couldn't find a whole lot of information on retired service dogs. The information kind of exists for puppies and for in training and candidates and service dogs, and then it stops. And I don't quite understand why it stops, because it's not like a retired service dog just dies. A retired service dog means that it got attacked, or it got injured, or it reached an old enough age where it needed to not be working all the time anymore. And so it transitioned into what? And that was the question that I couldn't find anywhere. Nobody really had rules about retired service dogs. They aren't, the only consensus I could find was that military working dogs were always military working dogs. They became retired military working dogs, but that you couldn't really consider them to be pets because they had been trained all their life to do this one highly specialized thing and work and go, go, go. And if you suddenly took that away, you were going to have this Tasmanian devil on your hands. And so you needed to still find a way to give them an outlet and give them a job, but also let them relax and go at their own pace. And I adapted that approach with Robbie. But recently I've been working with more and more clients, and I did have the opportunity to talk to a client one-on-one about retiring their service dog. And a lot of questions came up, and I felt like it would be a good question to do on my Patreon page, to go into detail about different plans you could make, different questions you need to cover, where to find information about retired service dogs. Don't really have great advice there, but give you an idea of what you should start thinking about now. So, service dogs retire for different reasons. Hopefully, your service dog retires from their job as your service dog when they're old. So 10, 11, if they're a smaller breed, maybe 12 or 14. They stop working with you on a day-to-day basis. They might do one or two tasks that they offer, but they're not things that you directly ask for. They're not doing public access with you anymore. And they mostly get to sleep a lot. But you still need to give them exercise, mental stimulation, playtime, feed them, and see to their senior service dog needs. What are they? I'm just going to keep saying retired working dog because they're not really pets. They're sort of pets in the eyes of the law. Okay, you should not be taking your retired service dog to non-pet friendly locations for a lot of reasons. But one of them is that nowhere in the laws can I find anything specifically referring to retired service dogs. So let's just assume that they're retired means you're not a service dog anymore. But in the eyes of the law. Second part of that is that if you take a service dog into a place that they associate with working, they're going to try and work. So if your goal is trying to teach them to accept retirement, continually taking them to places where they think they need to work and be on duty just is confusing and not fair. So in the eyes of the law, let's say, yes, a retired service dog becomes a pet. But what you need to understand is that their brain is not a pet brain. Their body is not a pet body. Their body has been worked very, very hard for its entire life. And so they will have more needs and considerations for maintaining their health, maintaining their weight, and possibly taking care of injuries than a pet dog. Because your service dog has been walking on hard terrain, they've been jumping in and out of your car, they've been doing weird stuff with their face, they've been moving heavy things, they've been carrying things, all sorts of stuff. All of that causes wear and tear on your dog's body over time. So that wear and tear doesn't happen in a pet dog, unless the pet dog has been doing crazy stuff its whole life, like competition level agility. But even still, it's going to be a different kind of wear and tear than a service dog's body. The second part is their mind. Okay, your service dog doesn't understand that they're a pet now. They've been taught to do stuff, and they've been taught to do stuff automatically. And so more than likely, they're going to keep doing the stuff that you told them to do. They're going to keep alerting to your condition. They're going to keep interrupting things that they see that you train them to interrupt to. They're going to keep approaching a door and automatically opening it. Do you want to tell them no? That one's up to you. I found it very difficult to actually tell Robbie no. I just tried to ignore him sometimes. and he got the message, but the way he responded to that was he would go hang out in my husband's office all day by himself, and he ignored me in turn. And that was really hard to watch. It was really hard to get him to do stuff and to keep him motivated and to keep him engaged with me because I took his job away and he was angry. And I know that's anthropomorphizing, but when you've worked with a working animal and you suddenly take their job away, there's no other way to put that. They get irritated. Some dogs, some animals, period, dogs, horses, whatever, get depressed, and some get irritated and act out, and others just keep doing their job until you force them to slow down and stop. And that can be difficult to do, and it changes animal to animal. Robbie started to get the message he wasn't allowed to do work anymore, but if I was in a lot of pain, he still demanded that I accept his assistance. And so in those cases, I would let him do a task, but it was very far and few between. I let him do little things like pick up my keys, pick up my phone, stuff to satiate him. I included him in demo videos because that gave him something to do and was usually pretty exhausting for both of us. And he got to help with Austin's training. But he was not a pet. He didn't see himself as a pet. He wasn't mentally a pet. He wasn't physically a pet. By the eyes of the law, he was not a service dog anymore. But I chose to never call him a pet. I called him a retired service dog. I got him a tag that he wore on his harness and that he wore out in pet-friendly locations that said, "Retired service dog, please be gentle." And I did not take him places that were not pet-friendly locations. He only went to pet-friendly locations. So he still got to go out and about, but more and more we noticed that he was getting uncomfortable with car rides, and so he stopped going places as much with us. Should you rehome your dog? I don't know. I don't. I wish I had a great answer for you, but I don't. When I was first learning about service dogs, I couldn't understand the idea of rehoming a service dog. They're your partner. They've been your source of support for years. I estimated that I probably spent more hours in a day every day with Robbie than I ever did my husband, which is kind of a scary number when you think about it. And we had our own language and this really crazy strong bond, and I couldn't imagine why anybody would need to rehome their service dog until I got there. And until I was trying to train a second dog and take care of a geriatric, injured, retired service dog. And I was absolutely exhausted. And I understood. Because just because your service dog retires doesn't mean your disability retired with them. You're still disabled. And taking care of a geriatric dog or taking care of a dog who's been retired because of behavioral problems or because they got attacked and then developed behavioral problems is an added strain that is not going to go great for your disability, depending on what your disability is. Either way, it is going to be an added level of workload for yourself and for your other human support staff, caregivers, partners, spouses, children, friends, whoever is helping you. They're going to have to take on that extra workload as well, because there are going to be days where you just don't have the energy to provide for two dogs. And if you're having to, okay, so Did we rehome Robbie? No. And the reason for that was that I was really attached to Robbie. But we did think about it. We didn't know anyone personally who we felt would be capable of handling him. Robbie was a great dog. He was a wonderful dog to work with. But he was a dog who was returned twice after being adopted for being destructive because people didn't do enough with him. We had already learned the secrets to how to manage Robbie, how to provide for Robbie, and how to manage all the weird old man quirks he developed. And so we made the decision to keep doing that. But that's not going to be the case for everyone. And having 2 dogs at once was outrageously expensive for us. And that was something that we hadn't factored in. So that's something you need to factor in as well, is that the cost of food goes up, the cost of heart guard goes up, the cost of next guard goes up, the cost of everything goes up. And those are just what we do, but heartworm and flea and tick medicine, whatever. The costs go up for everything. And that's something that has to be considered. How long are the costs going to go up too? If your dog got retired at 4, but they still have the rest of their life to live, that's a really long time those costs are going up. If your dog gets retired at 10, they have maybe 2 years left, that's not as bad, but it's still a factor. Yes, that sounds cold. I know it sounds cold, but sometimes we have to be hyper rational when we're talking about service dogs and disability. If your dog had to be retired because of a medical issue, you probably can't handle that. Like, there's a chance you might be able to handle that, but you're already disabled, and so you trying to take care of a disabled or medically special needs dog is going to be an added strain on you. It's going to be an added energy strain, and it's going to be an added financial strain, and those are things you need to consider. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I'm going to point out things that you need to think through, because they're very big commitments, and your retired service dog has worked a really hard job, and they deserve a really good retirement. And so you need to be honest with yourself if you think you're able to provide that for them or not. And a good retirement does not look like just laying on the couch all day, because working dogs are not going to accept that well. If your dog had to be retired because they were attacked or they developed a behavioral issue like reactivity or aggression or all of the above, that's not a great dog for your next in-training dog or your next service dog program dog to be around. And you don't want your new dog learning bad habits or bad behaviors from your previous dog. And you also are going to have to spend extra time working with your previous dog to fix those problems or get them under control for that dog's sanity and your own and the safety and welfare of others, on top of training your second dog or on top of working with your second dog. And that's a lot. So most teams I've talked to in that situation do try to rehome their service dog, because that's a whole other level of training and support that they haven't necessarily been able to give. And that's 100% okay. That's not something that should be shamed or discouraged, because they're making the choice that's best for them, and they're making the choice that's best for their dog. There are plenty of good reasons to rehome a service dog. I hear so many people say, "Oh, I would never give my dog up," or "people who really love their dog would never let them go." That's awesome sentiment. It's also absolute bullshit. It's living in a fantasy land where bad things never happen and where love always wins out, and where your disability magically goes away and magically stops being a factor in your life. there are always going to be reasons to rehome a pet dog and a service dog that are completely legitimate and that people shouldn't be afraid to talk about. And I think that's why it's so hard to find information about retired service dogs, is because people don't want to talk about it, because either they're afraid of the reaction people are going to give them, or they don't want to be the one to say, hey, it's okay to do this, this, and this. I also think that there's just, like, I don't know why people seem to think service dogs just sort of vanish when they retire. That's not the case. Or that it's not as important to know what to do with a retired service dog. I think it's entirely important to know what to do with a retired service dog. And so that's why I'm making this podcast. But rehoming is a personal choice. It's something that you need to look at what your dog needs, what you need, what your lifestyle is like, what your budget is like, what your disability is like, what resources you have available to you, and make the choice that is absolutely best for you and for your dog. Sometimes keeping the dog might be what's best for you, but it might not be what's best for them. And you have to be ready and willing to make that judgment call. Recently, I helped rehome a dog who couldn't be a service dog because of health issues. And it wasn't practical to keep her because it would have been too much of a strain on this person's disability. And so they found them a really great, experienced, knowledgeable home, did a trial run, everything went great. And now that dog has a wonderful new life. They've got a lot of great training to jump off of. And this person's able to turn their focus on their next attempt at training a service dog without worrying about managing multiple dogs at once. It's a difficult decision, 100%. Never going to be an easy choice. And unfortunately, there do seem to be more resources out there for retired military working dogs than there are for retired service dogs, which is unfortunate. If anybody wants to start a charity, maybe you should look into that. But ultimately, what you do, you need to consider what's best for both parts of your team, yourself and your dog. And don't let other people shame you into making a decision that you just don't feel good about. Like, if you really don't feel good about rehoming your dog, try to make it work, see how it goes. But maybe keep an open mind if you might need to rehome them. One thing we did that really helped us was there would be days where Robbie would go hang out with my mother-in-law the entire day. And she thought it was great, and he thought it was great, and it took a little bit of the load off of me. I got to have a day where I only had to focus on one dog, and that was really helpful. That was a part-time situation, but it was really, really helpful. So that might be something that works for you as well. Do you have to give your dog back to the program or the breeder? You're going to have to read the fine print. If you got a puppy from a breeder or you got a dog from a service dog program, read the fine print. Keep all the paperwork. Ask that question at the time you get the dog. Some people do want the dog back. And the reason for that is they want to be able to give that dog a good retirement. It's not because they think you're a bad person. It's not because they hate you. It's because they want to make sure that dog has a really good retirement and they accept that you're disabled and that might be really hard for you. Breeders sometimes want the dog back so that they can breed it if it's been intact, or so that they can have it as an example. I don't know. I don't fully understand why breeders want the dog back if it's old and retired. I completely understand why breeders take puppies back if it's not a good fit for you or it's not healthy enough for you, because maybe that puppy can go on to a different home where it will be more suitable. So it really just depends on each program and each breeder's set of rules and policies. That is something that they should have in their contract with you. It's something you should ask up front. And it's something that if you didn't ask up front, but you got a dog from a program or you got a dog from a breeder, you might go check now and try to figure out if that is something you need to be prepared for in a few years, or as a worst case scenario, if that should happen. What else should you do for your retired service dog? It's going to depend on why your dog was retired and what their job previously was. You might be able to let them keep doing a few tasks. You might be able to come up with different games that they're able to do. Maybe they can do light agility. Maybe they can do scent work. Maybe they can learn new games to play with you for mental stimulation. Maybe they need to be retired from mobility, but they could still do alert work. I don't know. It's going to depend on your each individual dog. They still need exercise, playtime, feeding, grooming, healthcare. They still need all of the same things, just smaller quantities and shorter bursts and a different game plan. We switched Robbie from doing balance exercises on a balance disc to doing balance exercises on a memory foam pillow to accommodate his joints better. You might need to add supplements to their food, things like that. You might have to teach them how to swim and take up hydrotherapy. You might need to find them a chiropractor. But all of this comes back to what your resources are, what your decisions are, what you feel capable of doing. But the most important thing I want you to do is, one, make a plan. Even if it's not a good plan, even if it's not a plan that you're able to follow through on, at least make a plan and think about it before this hits you. The second thing is that your retired service dog does not go on a shelf and become decoration. They have worked their entire life for you, and they deserve so much more than to just sleep on the couch for the rest of their life. They deserve to still be treated with respect, to get your time, to get your affection, to get your attention, to get rules and structure and boundaries reinforced for them, and to get a good life, to get a good end of their life and a good retirement, because they have absolutely 100% earned it. And it's our responsibility to find a way to give it to them, whether it's coming from us or coming from someone else. If you do have to rehome your dog, please do not just rehome them blindly on the internet. Vet people, interview them, check them out, do a trial run, make sure your dog is going someplace good and decent and honest and not someplace shady. Thank you for listening to this podcast question about what do I need to do for my retired service dog. If you have any questions or you're going through this process now, send me a message. I'd love to talk to you more about it one-on-one if that's something that you think you could benefit from.